All right, so today we're going to go over how to correctly put on sterile gloves in an open gloving technique, and then I'm going to attempt to show you a couple of common mishaps and how you would handle that. So starting off with your gloves, we're going to go ahead and open up our outer plastic, and you can touch the outer part of this paper. That is fine because that's going to be dirty. And so we're going to lay this out on our table. I'm going to fold it, and it's very nice. It tells you which side is the left and which side is the right. So highly recommend that you've got this oriented the correct way. I'm going to go ahead and unfold the top, unfold the bottom. You can see I kind of crimp it a little bit because this loves to kind of collapse back in on itself. So you have to be a little bit tough with this paper. And so my hands are going to slide underneath these flaps, just like that. And anywhere that I'm pinching both sides of the paper at this point is now going to be contaminated. So where my thumbs are is now no longer a sterile part of this inner paper. But I'm going to open this up, and I like to kind of fold the corners down a little bit like that. And it helps it just kind of train this paper to stay flat and not collapse in on itself. So besides where I've kind of pinched the outer parts of the paper, the rest of this inner part is sterile, along with my gloves. So your gloves are folded so that where your numbers are is where it's going to be up against your skin. So that is going to be eventually dirty, so that's where you can touch. So I'm going to go ahead and do this first as a left-handed person. That's how I typically glove because I'm left-hand dominant. But you would typically put your first glove on your dominant hand, and then your second glove would go on your non-dominant. So I'm going to glove my left hand first. So I'm going to touch this folded part of my glove and pick it up, and I'm going to open up this part of the glove. I'm going to slide my hand, kind of got like my fingers kind of like a little cone, slide my fingers in, and then I'm going to, where I get towards the fingers, I'm going to spread my fingers out and try to make it so that they're all in the correct holes. So my thumb and then all my fingers, still keeping my hand down here on the folded part of this glove and kind of sliding it into place like that. And so my right hand does not want to touch anything that's going to be on the outer part of my glove. So I'm going to take my right hand and just kind of pinch the bottom part of this glove and kind of roll it down like that. And so because I touched this part of my glove, I know that from pretty much here up is sterile, but I'm not going to consider this very end of my glove to be sterile anymore. Now my left hand is sterile, so it's going to slide on the inside part of this flap, because remember the numbers are going against my skin and they're going to be dirty. So again, fingers kind of cone-like at the beginning, kind of wiggle in, and once I get to my fingers, then I'm going to spread them out in the glove. And this is where take your time and kind of make sure that your fingers all line up with those holes. Not the end of the world if they don't, but it's going to make your life a lot easier if you pause at this point and get yourself situated. And then rolling that down. Remember, my left hand is still in that fold. It's not touching my skin. And then I'm just going to let go of the bottom part of my glove. At this point, I'm going to make sure my fingers are nice and rolled down. I'm lucky that my fingers don't have a lot of wrinkles in them, but some people end up having a lot of wrinkles. So take the time to roll all your fingers down, because the last thing you want is a bunch of extra glove or wrinkles at your fingertips, because it's going to make it so you don't have as much dexterity and make it so you can't feel as well when you're doing things. So that was the correct way of putting on sterile gloves. Went pretty well, but it doesn't always go that way. All right, so we just went over the correct way of doing open glove technique, and now I'm going to attempt to show you a couple of common, not mistakes, but mishaps that happen when you're trying to do open gloving. So again, I've got my gloves here. I'm going to open my outer layer, and again, I can touch this paper because this is going to go over or against the table. Fold them out, make sure that my left and right is correct, and I'm going to first unfold the top and bottom flaps here. And then stick my fingers under here and pull this out. So I've got my sterile field. So luckily my gloves are laying nice and flat, which is as they should be, but sometimes when your gloves are folded a strange way, you might end up with a glove that's kind of landed like that. And there's no need to panic, you can fix this. So you can manipulate your paper from the underside because that is already dirty. So you can reach under here and then kind of tilt your paper until your glove flips back into place. So just remembering that anywhere that I'm pinching, that is no longer sterile. So I just always assume that the whole margin of my paper is not sterile anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and put my gloves on as a right hand dominant person, just so we keep it equal. So with my left hand, I'm going to grab the folded part where my numbers are at on my right glove. And as I said before, you want to kind of have your fingers kind of in like a cone-like shape, and that's going to help you get into your gloves. But sometimes if it's really hot out and your hands are sweaty or clammy, which happens to all of us at some point, you might struggle with this a little bit. So I'm going to show you what commonly happens to you all. And it's that your fingers kind of end up in some strange, weird position like this, where your fingers aren't where they should be. And so that's why I say that you should always try to pause when your fingers get to where your finger and thumb holes start going out in your glove so you can get in the right position. So before you start just shoving your hand even further into your glove, when all your fingers are kind of over by your pinky in this case, still holding on to the flap here, you can try to kind of manipulate your fingers so that they are where they're supposed to be, and just take your time. And you can see I was able to get all my fingers back where they were supposed to go, but sometimes, ignore this, you guys have like fully committed and you're like kind of jammed up in here, and sometimes you just can't fix this without actually grabbing your fingers. So if I find that I'm just really struggling, I'm gonna keep my hand like this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and put my other glove on. So even with my fingers not where they're supposed to be, I can still go ahead and grab the top part of this glove and slide my left hand in here. And it's gonna be a little bit trickier, but still just holding on to my cuff, I can get this left glove on, watching all the fingers on my right glove to make sure they're not brushing my skin. You can see how far I'm holding out away from my forearm. And I'm just gonna let it snap. I'm not gonna worry about where it goes. And now I've got my left hand that can help reposition my fingers and get them into place. And now my hand is a little sweaty and it's gonna be a little bit harder to get this on, but I can still wiggle my fingers and get them where they're supposed to be. And again, my fingers are in that cuff, so I'm not touching my skin, and get that cuff into place. So I always assume that the very end of my cuffs are not sterile. I just assume that in open gloving technique, that from my palm up is what has stayed sterile. Another thing that can happen to you, I'm just gonna go ahead and mess this up a little bit, is you kind of end up with a cuff like that. Or maybe you've got a watch on, it gets caught on your watch. Just leave it. Don't try to fix it, because if you try to fix this, you're gonna end up contaminating your hand, trying to get into those wrinkles and not have your fingers brush the skin. I guarantee you that you are going to contaminate yourself. So typically I try to take off any watch before I do open gloving. But if this does happen to you, just leave it and just accept that you're gonna have a really awkward cuff on one hand, and I promise you will survive. So at this point, like I said, my hands are getting a little hot, so it's a little bit harder to get these fingers down, but just a quick reminder again to roll your fingers all the way down. You don't want any wrinkles at your fingertips. Take your time to do this, because if we watch you put gloves on and then you don't roll your fingers down and you just say that you're done, we are gonna consider that not done, because that's not how you would wanna perform any kind of surgery.